Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nimhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And what a treat. What an absolute treat for the show today. A guest that I have been harassing for a while to try to get on here. But this man's got important things going on. And, it takes a little time to find the right moment to join. But one of the true Seahawks legends, former 10th overall pick, blocked for Barry Sanders, legendary University of Virginia left tackle. For eventually your Seattle Seahawks, Ray Roberts joins the show. Ray, man, it is so great to have you. Uh, I'm not going to blame you for the fact that the Seahawks' worst record in their franchise history was your rookie year. It's not your fault. I don't want you to feel that pressure, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad that I don't have to carry the burden, but I got a whole lot of mail back in the day. We didn't have a lot of email, but I got a lot of fan mail that gave me a hard time back in the day.
Did they really? Did they
Oh
like
yeah,
they
yeah.
they, they like they put it on your shoulders, huh?
Oh yeah. I kept some of the letters too, and they were just telling me like, "Oh, you're supposed to be the difference maker," and I'm like, "Well, I'm not throwing the ball, I'm not catching the ball, and I'm not running. So like, I'm doing all that I can. I mean, we had a great defense, but other than that, our offense was horrific.
You know what, man? There's some things I want to actually connect with that particular year. We got a bunch to cover with you because you're doing so much more than football nowadays, and so I want to talk about some of those things. If we get some time at the end, I also I know you've got some points of view on the Caitlin Clark topic. I'd love to talk to you about that if we could fit it in. But on that Seahawks team, for people that don't know, I mean, I'm an old, so I was alive back then. I was a fan watching that team. I'm wearing this hat. It's not my favorite hat, but I'm wearing it in honor of you as our guest here, Old Seahawks colors. And that was a 2-14 team, but it was
Hmm.
one of the most entertaining 2-14 teams you're going to find. You had Cortez Kennedy,
Yeah,
defensive player of the year, 14 sacks. Rufus Porter, one of my favorite players. You had guys like Chris Warren and John L. Williams. John L. was a little bit probably towards the end of his career, but
hmm,
Brian Blades, like there's a lot of guys on that team. Um, Dave Wyman, obviously, a
yeah.
lot of folks know Dave. So what was it like in that locker room for you as a rookie with this varying degrees of kind of like some real top shelf talent, but then also a new coach in Tom Flores and
Right.
just a lot of losing? Like, what was that like to enter the league for you?
Well, it was. I'll be honest. It was tough. For me personally, just for the losing, because at Virginia, the 4 years I was there, we were always like in the top 10 to 15 teams in the country, and I think my junior year we won 10 games. We were number one in the country for about a month. So I was just used to winning more. But the thing I will say about that team, the Seahawks team, is that even though uh, we could not score points, we couldn't move the ball, our defense was a top 10 defense in the league.
Mhm.
And I think Sports Illustrated that year may have voted Tom Catlin, our defense coordinator, the coach of the year because he had such a great defense and such a terrible offense that he was having to deal with. But our locker room was really tight, man. It was super tight. Our captains were like Eugene Robinson was one of our captains, the safety, and he just did a good job of holding our locker room together. Our defense never gave up on us. Like if we turned the ball over, we couldn't score. They would say, "Hey man, we're gonna get the ball back to you. We'll get the ball back to you. Just keep trying." And so, Dave Wyman and I talk about it all the time because I'm like, man, I know y'all had to be frustrated because it was. I mean, I think we averaged 8 points a game, and so if we could have averaged 14 points a game, we probably would have made the playoffs because our defense was that good, But so we couldn't get points, man. It just nothing. We went through Kelly Stauffer at quarterback, Dan McGuire at quarterback, and then we're down to Stan Galbaugh, who at the time was like one of the better quarterbacks in the world league, and so he was our third quarterback, and then Rick Tootin at that point, our punter, was our emergency quarterback. So we were hurting. Like we could run the ball, but we just could not throw the ball, couldn't really move the ball, generate points.
It was, yeah. That's one of the things I was curious about. Is just that dynamic. I've never seen a team that had that much of a disparity. That one side of the ball was. I mean, you're always going to have a little bit of inequity, but that defense, people couldn't do anything against that defense. And yet, to your point, like Dan McGuire, for the old Seahawks fans, remember this was actually his second season. He'd been drafted the year
Hmm.
before in the first round. This was back when the Seahawks actually drafted quarterbacks in the first round. It's they haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round since Rick Meyer
Yeah,
at this point. So, that quarterback room had to be. I mean, they were all, most of them were young, other than Gelbaugh,
yeah.
and it was a struggle. It was a
Uh,
struggle watching those guys play.
it was a
Um,
big struggle. And then our receiving crew, Brian Blades that year, I can't remember if he was holding out or if he was hurt, but he didn't come. He only played maybe 2/3 of the game. So the
that's
first
right.
third of the season, we didn't have him. But we had like Tommy Kane from Syracuse.
Yep.
We had Doug Thomas from Clemson, who was a track star that they had turned into a receiver. Uh, that was it. we,
Yeah.
I think Lewis Clark
Lewis
was
Clark.
probably at the end of his career.
Uh-huh.
But that was it, man. We didn't have any dynamics at that receiver or even at the tight end spot to kind of give our quarterback someone to go to. Chris Warren was probably our best receiver out of the backfield because he had, he's good hands, big tall guy, could run fast. We did I think that year we led the AFC. We're in the AFC West at the time. I think we led the AFC West in rushing, or at least Chris did. So we could
Yeah.
we could run the ball, but we couldn't. We just couldn't make any hay throwing the ball. The quarterbacks, I don't, Dan McGuire's a great dude. Was 6'8" or 9, a cannon of an arm, but he couldn't move. And with
Yeah.
the offensive line, the way we had a bunch of guys playing different positions they hadn't played before and a rookie, man, we needed somebody that could be a little bit more mobile to kind of help us out a little bit. And so it just didn't. And then Tom Flores is into the let's just throw that thing deep all the time. There's no there's no underneath routes. There's no like screen passes or crossing routes or quick out routes. Everything was just way down the field, so it was hit and miss all the time.
Yeah, it's actually a great point, and I was definitely not sophisticated enough at that point in my fandom to realize Tom Flores came from the Raiders, Al Davis, like they were just a big throw it deep kind of team. And when you
Hmm.
have a coach who wants to have the long developing plays for quarterbacks that are young or not necessarily that developed, and you got a young offensive line, that is not a good recipe. That's not good coaching. No offense,
Not a
Mr. Flores, but
not a good match.
not a
Not
good
not a
match.
good match at all.
But, Ray, one of the things I noticed when I was looking back at that team is that offensive line you were on reminds me a little bit in the sense that it was a young group
Hmm.
of what's going on with the Seahawks right now. You had you as a rookie, 23. Andy Heck was next to you. He was
Yeah.
25. Joe Toffenmeyer was a center. He's 27. Bill Hitchcock on the other side was 27, a right tackle. So you had
Yeah.
there was not the vet on that line
Right.
necessarily. Um, how do you think that like when you look at the Seahawks now, and they've got
Hmm.
these young tackles and obviously these young guards, young center, but then they've got like Laken Tomlinson and George Fant. How important do you think that might be for this new Seahawks offensive line to have a little bit of veteran leadership in there?
Yeah. One of the things that I said more recently, and this is probably something that didn't happen for me until probably like my fourth year, third or fourth year, is that Charles Cross has to start. He's more of a quiet, reserved dude, but sometimes you got to step out of your comfort zone and start to be a vocal leader because that room has a lot of or at least last year they did. They had a lot of quiet dudes. Like
Mhm.
there's no one that was going to really say a whole lot. Abe Lucas does like speak a lot with how he plays, but they needed a vocal leader in there, and so hopefully George Fant or one of these more veteran dudes can come and do that. But it's also hard to be the vocal leader if you're not playing. You know what I'm saying? Like so you can be a starter, be the vocal leader, get hurt, and you're out for 6 or 8 weeks. Ain't nobody trying to hear you. It's
Mhm.
like you're not out
Mhm.
there practicing, you're not playing the games, so no one wants to hear what you have to say. So I put a lot of I put it on Charles Cross's shoulders that he has to be the dude. He's a ninth pick in the draft. He should be the stud on the offensive line. He looks like he's having a pretty good off season, and so I think this is the time that he has to step out of his shell because uh, you need somebody to call your stuff when it ain't going right. When I think it was my second or third year, Ray Donaldson came here as a center, and Ray had played for centuries. It seemed like, and and Ray, before any of the coaches would say anything to us on the sideline, he would pull us up and be like, "Hey man, like this ain't working. Like you got to do whatever." And like I used to have my penalty of choice is false starting, and so Ray would pull me to the side and like get right in my face and be like, "Hey man, if you false start again, I'm punch you in the face." Like, I'm like, stop it. Like you're killing us. And so that you need to have somebody that's willing to do that kind of stuff. Obviously have the captains and leaders of the team, but each room needs to have leadership that way too. This is a young offensive line. The one thing I do like, Brian, is that Scott Huff has worked with younger dudes, his entire career, and I think closing that generational gap or having someone that's been around the younger dudes is going to benefit this team. The energy is different, with the offensive line, um, and you can just see like the way he interacts with the players is more collegial kind of, so it has a different kind of energy to it. And then I love the way that, I've been down there a couple times, so I just love the way that he's paying attention to all the little details on the offensive line. Like I was telling someone yesterday, he puts them in every possible situation that they're going to experience in the game for all the different plays, and you don't normally see that in the NFL, and so that was good to see.
Say a little bit more about that. What do you when you say puts them in individual in all the situations? What does that mean?
Yeah, so let's say like if it's pass protection and you're the right tackle, a lot of the times, probably 85% of the time, 90% of the time, your guy's just going to rush to the outside all the time. And so a lot of times you spend a lot of time protecting the outside, protecting the outside, protecting the outside. Well, the other day they were doing a drill down there where they were just setting on air. So you had to set outside, and then everyone did that. And then the next time you had to set outside, but then jump back inside in case the dude moved back inside. The next time you had to set inside to kick back outside, like that kind of stuff. There was a drill where they were pretending that all the gaps were full. So there's like a team showing like a blitz, and so you had the tackle and the guard had to step down and protect the inside gap, and then if that guy doesn't come, try to kick back out to get to the outside. So like all those different little things that you experience in a game, they're practicing every single one of those things, and then even like the details of the setting up the drills. Like if you're not aligned to the bag right, or the guys not giving you the right look, like they're just paying so much attention to all the little details. And to me, that's what elevates an offensive line. Because sometimes when you've been coaching in the NFL for a long time, you assume that the guys get there, and there's things that you assume that they just know. And I like the way they're going back and going like, you might know this, but we're gonna rep this. We're gonna practice this. We're gonna put attention to it. So in case you forgot, you're gonna be reminded of it. And I like that type of teaching. And I think you see that going across the whole field. But I've been paying specific attention to the offensive line, and I see it a lot with them.
Well, considering the fact that they've changed practice rules so much in the NFL, a lot less padded practices, it seems like offensive line plays eroded a little bit, especially
Hmm.
run blocking has become like a lot with the spread offenses in college. Like it's a lost art to some degree. So it's
Yeah.
really great to hear that there's extra coaching going on there as much as they can, as you said, kind of doing it against air. But you also mentioned Charles Cross in that conversation. And this is a guy you said, like you, top
Hmm.
10 pick in the draft, left tackle, franchise pillar. And there's pressure that comes with that.
Yep.
He's been okay his first couple years,
Hmm.
but he hasn't been that dude yet. Like he just hasn't
Right.
been that. And part of what Charles Cross came into the league with is a reputation of being a little bit of a finesse guy, like
Yep.
good feet, can pass protect, but does he really have like the dog mentality to be a run blocker, and can he be consistent? So there's been some rumors that he's shown up a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger. His body's a little different. I'm curious if you've observed that at all.
Yeah, for sure. And like I think you saw a little bit of this last year. Like when he started the season, last season, I could tell that he had put a little bit more energy into like being more violent as a run blocker. But then he got hurt. and was, missed a lot of time. But been at practice, the 3 or 4 times I've gone with this new staff, and just watching like not just like his body composition, like he looks a little more lean, a little more muscular up top, but just looking at like his body language, like the bend in his knees, the way he gets in the stance, the way he comes out of his stance, the violence that he uses with his hands. You can tell that either someone was in his ear before he got to the new staff, or this is a focus of the new staff to get him to play that way. And you can see him being more explosive, like you said. Now we're going against air and handheld bags and things like that, but you can see the intent of what he's trying to get done. And when I scouted him in college, I said the exact same thing. Like, dude can slide and move, change directions. Just didn't know how well he's going to be in the run game. But I do think that there's a chance for him to be better at it, because they're focusing on it, and they're coaching him to be better at it. Looking at his, even uh, in his 2 point stance and pass protection. Like, for a dude that's really athletic, he used to stand. He used to be really tall in his stance. And but at practice the other day, I noticed that he's a little more compact. So that means that he's bending at the knees better. He has more flexibility in his hips, so he can stay lower. And that's a big key with run blocking. You got to be able to maintain, be compact for 3 or 4 steps before you get tall. And so I think they worked with him, and then also with Olu on some of the same stuff. I think Olu uh, could uh, could benefit from some of that same work.
Well, you took me right to it. That's where I was going next. And I remember listening to you talk about Oluwatimi before, like after he got drafted by the Seahawks last year. And I think you have
Hmm.
some personal connection, like
Yeah.
maybe your son or someone else had played with him, or you had some inside info, and you're pretty bullish on him as a person and as a pro. One thing that like I had a little bit of concern about last year with him was just his drive, like his functional strength, like
Hmm.
on and like this comes from someone who's not an expert, but even just watching Evan Brown, who's no like amazing pro, but he's a 320-pound center. He's a big
Right.
center. When he'd hit the sled and how it would react versus when Olu would hit it and how it
Right.
would react, it was a pretty significant difference. And so he seems like a super smart dude. I'm curious, like a big story I'm like kind of paying it. Like, did he add strength? Did he his lower body? Is he in a better
Hmm.
position to be a drive blocker if necessary in the NFL this year? And like, feel free to disagree if you don't
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that was something that he needed to improve in the first place.
No, like honestly, like if you talk to Olu, so the way I know Olu is that he started at Air Force, and then he transferred to Virginia. And so he kind of made a name for himself at Virginia as like one of the top centers in the country. And then he transferred to Michigan. And one of the reasons he transferred to Michigan, because he wanted to be a better run blocker. At Virginia, we ran like this kind of tricky offense that didn't really benefit offensive linemen or running backs. Like, the top rushers were quarterbacks, so it was kind of a
Mm.
weird offense. And so my son at the time was the manager for the football team at Virginia, so he and Olu were really tight, and so that's kind of how I got to know him and met him at Virginia and stuff. And so even last year, like I would call him and say, "Hey, man, this is what I'm seeing," like in the preseason. And one of the things I told him was that you have to be able to drive people off the ball. Like, you have to sustain blocks, and then even if you just move them 12 inches, like that's going to benefit. And I think sometimes in college, you get a lot of college guys get so much into their bench press, and so you can play against dudes that can be, you know, you may not play against a whole lot of NFL type dudes, and so when you grab them, a lot of them know like, oh, you're the stud offensive lineman, like I'm probably done for the day, and they don't give you a whole lot of fight back, and so Olu was used to grabbing dudes, strong hands, and just kind of holding them in place and not moving his feet. But in the league, if you do that, as soon as the ball comes, you're going to get shed. They're going to make the tackle right at the line of scrimmage. And so the thing I was having him work on was staying in the drive phase of his run blocking a little bit longer. So instead of taking 1 or 2 steps and then trying to bench press a guy, you try to move him like 3 or 4 steps before you start to use your bench press. And the way I explained it to him is that you in the NFL you block with your lower body and you finish with your upper body. So you got to move them with your lower body. And so watching him in practice the other day, even his body looks a little more lean and
Mm.
stronger. And then just the drills and things that they were doing, he looks more explosive coming off the ball, like hitting a sled, or even in their team drills and stuff like that. A lot of that is a mentality thing because he's plenty strong enough. But a lot of it is just a mentality and a like uh, reframing, how you have to go about it from one league to the next. And so I think they're working on that. I think he's working on it because he is a super smart dude. He's been successful everywhere he's ever been, and so I'm going to give him the benefit of doubt that he can be successful in this league too.
Great information. This is Ray Roberts we're talking to, and I think two of the most critical guys on this line you've mentioned in Oluwatimi and Charles Cross. Abe Lucas obviously is out right now, so not a lot to talk about there. But I'm curious if any of the other players, the newer players, have caught your attention. Three guys that I'm curious in particular. Obviously, Christian Haynes was their
Hmm.
top draft pick at guard, but then they've got Mike Jarrell, the Findlay tackle, and Satawa Lamea. I'm
Yeah.
curious if any of those guys stood out to you, or you've talked to them, or any impressions you
I
have there.
haven't had a chance to talk to him, but just watching them, Jarrell and I can't say the
Lamea.
Utah dude. Yeah. They to me seem more like projects. Like
Mm,
they're versatile players. They've both played inside and outside, and they've taken reps with the Seahawks inside and outside. So you can create some competition at those areas. But the guy that looks the part and looks like you could maybe, either rotate him in at the beginning of the season to get him going, or just, pencil him in, is Haynes. Like he just looks the part. Like he's very compact, um, uh, body type, and but he's very athletic and mobile. So the way he kind of slides up to the second level, the way he can take over double teams, or pull and run and block, those types of things. I think he has a chance to, I don't know if he'll be the starter, but to get a lot of reps as a rookie. And the other two guys I think are projects, and you hope that that you hit on one of those two. I doubt that you're going to hit on both of them. Like it's very rare that you draft three offensive linemen and all three of them make the team and contribute in some kind of way. It's just not very common to happen. So, but I do think of those other two, uh, I like the kid out of Utah a little better. Jarrell seems a little stiff to me,
mm,
and so that sometimes can translate to not, athletically, like with the way that, think about a Byron Murphy and all the way he brings the juice and athletic and quick and all that kind of stuff. You can if you're not as mobile and a little stiff, you can have a little trouble with that sometimes. So of those three dudes, I do think that Haynes has shown, at least in non-padded practices, that he kind of looks the part. You see him walking around, moving around. He's quiet now, but having spoken to him, I think he's just kind of doing a rookie thing, like just going, okay, let me, for now I'm gonna be seen and not heard. But he seems like a dude that's not afraid to be heard, but he's just
mm.
trying to be respectful and earn his way until he gets to that place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good to hear. And there's actually one other guy that I don't know if you have any thoughts on, but McClendon Curtis is a guy that's been getting the reps at right guard, and kind of a name
Hmm.
that most Seahawks fans are not familiar with. Anthony Bradford has been out with some ankle stuff. Is this a guy that you think is someone that could surprise and maybe get more snaps than people expect, or is it just situation right now with the way the injuries are and
Well, I'll be. So when I played for the Seahawks, my rookie year, we had this guy named Grant Fiesel,
uh-huh.
and he used to always say, he had this little saying, you can't make the club in the tub. And so, I don't know what's going on with Anthony Bradford, but he hasn't been, obviously hasn't been practicing, taking many reps. And some of these other dudes, including, man, his name just went off the top of my head, who we were just talking about.
McClendon Curtis.
McClendon, yeah, including McClendon, they're getting very valuable reps, and along with Haynes, and so it's going to be a dogfight, I think, for him to get back into this mix to see if he can become a starter. I like McClendon because he's a little bit taller than the other guys, and I don't know. I grew up playing with taller guards, and so I wasn't used to seeing them more, short. And I'm saying short, they're like 6'4". You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
But I'm not used to seeing the squattier guards. But in this offense, with the movement, I think they're gonna like with pin and pull and pulling players and things like that. I think it works for them. But I think McClendon has a chance to fight for the position. I think the thing I like, Pete Carroll always had the always compete thing, and they have dudes that are here to compete for jobs, and so the cream of the crop is gonna rise to the top. And if you're not out there getting reps, then you're losing ground. Like you're either getting better or you're falling back. You never stand the same. And so McClendon is really taking advantage of his opportunities. He's been taking reps with the first team, sometimes switching it out with Haynes and things. And he looks good. He looks like it's hard to tell like
Yeah.
we were just talking earlier, uh, with the way that practices are structured now and things like offensive line struggles so much because you can look so great without pads. Everybody
Mhm.
can look like they're doing great things, and all of a sudden you put on pads and you're playing with real bullets, so to speak, and then you go like, okay, this is why that guy has played with a couple different teams or wasn't drafted in a certain spot or that this, that, and the other. So just trying to go off of what I see, just in how they're being coached and how they're responding to the coaching. I think he and Haynes have done a good job at that right guard spot.
Do you think that, I mean, the run game is such a big thing, I think, for this team, and everyone's talking about how Ryan Grubb's gonna have an effect on DK Metcalf and JSN and other things that I think hopefully that's true as well. But this run game also was pretty inconsistent, and it's been
hmm
inconsistent for a few years. Do you expect this? Like, do you get any impression that the type of scheme that they're going to run is going to be different, or that there's a better chance for whatever they're going to be doing here than what's been done in the past?
Yeah, I think to me was the downfall of the Seahawks in their run game, is that they kept chasing Marshawn Lynch. There's
Mm,
only there's only one of him, but they kept trying to replace him with Chris Carson, and then even with K9, like they were trying to say he had a little bit of Marshawn in him, even though he's a little bit more like shifting and elusive and stuff. And it's like you got to give up that whole Marshawn, the way he ran and the system that you ran with him. And even Thomas Rawls, they thought he was
mhm,
another Marshawn Lynch type player. It's like, no, dude, like there's only one Marshawn Lynch, dude. Like there's there's only one dude that can run it the way he ran it. And so you needed to really like be a little bit more innovative in that using the skill set that these guys have. So for instance, K9 last year, when he decided that he wanted to get more downhill running the football, is when he was more successful. His
mhm,
rookie year, he was bouncing everything to the outside and all this other kind of stuff. Then but when he decided to get downhill first, he was a better runner at that time. And I think this offense is designed that way. If you look at um, how they ran the ball with the Huskies, the running game that Coach McDonald came from with the Ravens. It was all between the tackles. It's really downhill, get after it. The thing I do like with the offense is some of the movement with the offensive line. Like people will say, um, that there's only one way to run like power football, right? But if you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they do a lot of pinning and pulling and moving
mhm,
guys around, and it's power football. And when
mhm,
you have a guy like Trent Williams with a 10-yard start before he hits you, that's power.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
Like, I don't care what
mhm.
you call it. That is like power coming to get you. You know what I'm
Uh-huh.
saying? And so I think they're going to be able to be able to use the offensive line that way. Use like last year, I think um, Damian Lewis was the only dude the only guy that pulled on the whole offensive line. Anytime there's going to be a pin and pull play, it was always uh, you know pulling from left to right. It was never right to left. Like Bradford wasn't that guy, kind of stuff. And so I think they're going to be able to create angle. Like the one thing that people don't understand with the running game, if you're just a casual fan, is that it's a numbers game and it's an angles game. And so you might think like, oh man, you got to be strong enough to pull this dude and put. Man, these dudes are so strong, it's really hard to move guys, right? And so you have to either do a whole lot of, and this is what I like about Grubb that they did at UW, all the motion, pre-snap motions and stuff, because they're creating angles. And if you can create angles, and if you can win the angles game and the numbers game on one side, you have a better chance at running the ball. But if you just think that everyone's just going to go one up, man on man, big on big every time and win, probably not gonna do very good in the run game. And so I think with what they did at UW and what I see them doing in practice, I think teams are gonna have a little bit more to deal with than just lining up and just running, just seeing everything just coming man for man down between the tackles.
Well, it's a good segue in that you mentioned Marshawn Lynch, and one of his famous sayings is "Mind your mentals." And
Yeah,
you've got your Mental Health Matters shirt on. You've got Big Ray's Garage Grind, a great podcast. So, folks, if they haven't checked that out, highly, highly recommend it. Really, really great stuff. Talk to all sorts of folks about a really important topic. And did you just go on with the Surgeon General? Did I see that? Did that just
yeah,
happen?
yeah. That
What
was
was
pretty
that
cool.
about, Ray?
Yeah, so the Surgeon General put out this report or advisory, if you want to call it, that loneliness is an epidemic in our country, and he was saying that it was trending that way before the pandemic, and then since the pandemic, it's just gotten worse. And so part of it was he brought together people from the music industry, the film industry, and the food industry, because those are three places, and sports. So those are four places that usually bring people together. But if you look at how we engage those things nowadays, it's not in groups of people. Like there's a lot of streaming, and you can watch movies from home. You don't have to go to the stadium to have a good experience watching sports. And then the one thing that the dude was saying about the food stuff is that, used to you go find a good restaurant and you
Uh-huh.
then invite, oh man, like you get all your friends, you come to the restaurant. Now you go to the restaurant, you take a picture of the food and you put it on social media. You may not even eat the food. You know what I'm saying? And you feel like you've shared it with everybody. And
Right.
so this idea around isolation and loneliness is really impacting mental health. And what they've compared loneliness to is smoking. So it like impacts dementia and heart disease and cancer. And so we're talking about so I was there obviously talking about the sports part, but then the mental health part because of the work I've been doing with mental health. And so that was really cool to be able to do that.
That's amazing. And loneliness is actually a topic I care quite a bit about, and I think men especially suffer from this for all sorts of
Yeah.
reasons. And I know women are like, I don't get why men just don't say what's going on with
Right.
them, and it's part of being a guy.
Yeah. Well,
And yeah, go
I
on.
was gonna say it's interesting because I was working a football camp yesterday over at Lake Washington High School, and there were some older coaches and players there, and we went to some food afterwards, and it's interesting because I listen to a lot of what people say, and they're like, we're sitting around the table, and they're like, oh man, young people are just different these days, and they don't know enough about toughness and all this other kind of stuff, and I'm like, like I can remember my dad saying that same thing to me. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure his dad said the same thing to him. And so
Uh-huh.
like a lot of our old guys nowadays think that it's some like badge of honor, and in a lot of parts of our lives, it's not. Like you were just saying, like if you look at the suicide rates for men
Hmm.
over 40, they commit suicide at four times greater than women do. So
Hmm.
all this trying to be tough stuff is manifesting itself in other ways. What you really need is, hey man, I need to maybe talk to somebody about what's going on, because you're either going to drive too fast, drink too hard, party too much, take unhealthy risks, all these different types of things to because the fear of saying like, hey, I need help, and people calling you soft or weak or not tough and all that kind of stuff in our culture is killing people. It is literally killing people. And what I try to do is debunk all of that, because I'll tell you, I'm one of the toughest people I know. I grew up tough, went through a whole lot of stuff growing up, and then that stuff caught up with me, and I had my own meltdown and struggle, and was afraid to ask for help and struggled for years until finally my ex-wife convinced me to go do this work that the NFL provided, and that changed my life. It probably saved me. I don't know that I doubt that I would have killed myself, but as far as just my spirit and just being out in public and doing things, yeah, it probably saved my life to go get help.
Yeah, I appreciate. I mean, it matters a lot to me that you share what you do, and I mean, I've listened to your pod and your first episode. If people haven't, I highly recommend go back to the first episode. You tell your story parents that struggle with alcohol, some
Yep.
domestic violence that, is a big thing for you, and, drugs with your sisters, and like a
Yep.
lot of stuff that, but it's also family you loved, and family
Absolutely.
that made you who you are, and it kind of defined and shaped you, like all families do. And so it's complicated, right? It's not
Yeah.
one thing. And, I do try through this show to bring people together. We got 50, 60, 70,000 people that come and watch this over the month, every month, and try to create community. And I noticed there's a lot of guys that are just looking for other guys to share a
Yeah.
passion with, and so, I'm curious, just quickly on that topic, if there's anything that, when you talk to the Surgeon General, or that you found that you think is, positive steps people can take, or things
Yeah.
that maybe could be helpful.
Yeah. One thing I would say is, and especially for men, right, is say yes. So when someone says like, "Hey man, like, there's this new movie out. Like, let's go to the movie, grab some popcorn, go to the movies, watch it." Say yes. If they're say like, "Hey, there's this new bar downtown that has like great, you know, drinks or whatever it is, great atmosphere. Let's go hang out. Let's go check." Say yes. If they say like, "Hey, to bring your family over, let's like play in the pool, or you know play pickleball or whatever it is," say yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that's how you build community, and that's how you defeat this idea around loneliness and isolation. And then the other part of it, and this is what I shared with the Surgeon General, is because he kept talking about vulnerability. And people think that being vulnerable is a weakness, and we need to reframe how we see it, because to when you're being vulnerable, you're sharing um, the deepest, darkest, most painful things about your life, your failures, your hurts, your pains, and you have chosen to have the strength and the courage and the trust to tell somebody that. And there's nothing weak about that. It takes a lot of strength to be able to do that. And so instead of looking at vulnerability as its weakness, we have to look at it as a strength. And then on the other side of that, if you're a person that someone is sharing this stuff with, you also have to be strong, because you can't then package that as a way to use it against them and weaponize it. And you can't use it as gossip. You have to look at it and go like, man, this person thinks so much of that I'm such a safe person that they're willing to share the most hurtful, painful, darkest things about their lives with me. I need to hold that as a gift, and then I need to figure out like in what ways I can help. And helping might just be pointing them in the right direction. Helping might just be being there to listen. They're not asking you to solve problems. Maybe they just need to talk to someone. And so this idea around vulnerability is important, and it's hard to do that if you're texting. It's hard to do that if you're not saying yes to things. And so it's hard to do that if you don't have people in your life that you're engaging in. So my challenge was reframe your idea around vulnerability, but then also make yourself a safe person for someone to share that with, because we all need it, like men, women, young people, old people, it doesn't matter. We need a safe person that we can share that with. And then all the other resources, there's a whole lot of mental health resources and things that are available nowadays, that you can find, and just point them in the right direction and point them into those things, support them, encourage them. Like my ex-wife did a great job of just saying like super supportive of me, really encouraging me to go get help when I was being a little bit stubborn about it, and saying like, I can just muscle through it and do whatever. But she made herself a safe space for me, and then followed through with like connecting me with people that could get me to the places I needed to go. Sandy Gregory, who used to work for the Seahawks, my wife reached out to her. She reached out to the people she knew in the NFL. Those people reached out to me, got me to the program that I needed to get to. So sometimes you don't have to be the person that solves the problems, but you can point someone in the right direction. But you can be a safe place for them to be vulnerable with.
That's powerful stuff, and it also, it warms my heart a bit, hearing when people's, ex-wives, ex-spouses, there's still care there, and
Yeah,
support, and positive relationship. And so, like I a lot of really, really inspiring stuff from you, Ray. And it's great to hear. Uh, you have a couple more minutes? I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about like something well, maybe it's not that much less important. There's some pretty big social issues involved with
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you've been tweeting about kind of the story of sports right now, which is Caitlin
Hmm.
Clark and her reception and how this is going and the Olympic team and all the different coded tweets that are out there that
Yeah.
people are there's just like unspoken that's kind of pretty clearly spoken stuff going on. Curious your thoughts on what's going on there in less than a little bit, not restricted to 240 characters on Twitter, 280
Right.
characters
Right.
on
Right.
yeah.
No, like, the way I look at it, man, is like I think Brock cured like the latest thing I responded to was Brock was saying something about her being left off the Olympic team and the pettiness and jealousy and all this other kind of stuff. And I don't care what league you play in. There's gonna if you're the top dog coming in, some of that stuff is gonna happen. Like I even talked. When I came in as a rookie and we were playing the Raiders, man, they were lining up to test me. I had to go against Howie Long, Greg Townsend, like anybody else that they had that were thought that they were pretty good. They were like pulling straws, like who's going to go against the rookie? Everyone wants to introduce you and welcome you to the league, that kind of stuff. And so some of the physical stuff is, it is what it is. Even the young lady that knocked her down, like she
Yeah.
has a history of playing like that. It's like saying like you've been surprised that Dennis Rodman did something crazy. You know what I'm saying? It'd be like, well, he has a history of doing that. So it was not. It's not a Caitlin Clark thing, I don't think. But the thing that I think and that I've come to realize and think about is that if everyone handled it the way Caitlin Clark did, it'd be fine. Like she's the only one that's not bitching and complaining about it. Like she has the right perspective on it, and she's going about it the right way. Some of the coded language and stuff is a little disappointing because uh, in our culture nowadays, man, like uh, everyone has to always like the same thing or care for the same stuff. And if there's anything that if anyone has a different opinion or thinks about it differently or whatever, then it's either you're a hater or you're this or you're that. And so it just kind of creates like a culture where there's no space for inclusion. There's no space, even if you have to just agree to disagree. Like there's a lot of things that like racist stuff that I don't agree with, but that doesn't
Hmm.
mean that I have to like beat a person up over it and all that kinds of things. Like we can have an intelligent conversation about it and keep it moving. Like I don't have to take you to dinner and hang out with you and come to your house and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have to like try to like counsel you and end your life. A lot of times it's an opportunity for education for people to learn from each other. And so I just wish that people would watch how she's handling it and let her be the lead person on how we should respond to it. And then the other thing too is that that's a lot of men trying to tell a lot of women what to do. You know what I'm saying? And there's
Yeah.
there's something about that I don't like either. And a lot of them
Yeah.
are late to the game. They haven't
Yeah.
followed the game the way that they just follow Caitlin Clark and just think like, oh, I know Caitlin Clark, so therefore I know basketball, and this is what's best for women's basketball. And so, should she be on the Olympic team? I don't know. It's if you want to look at the popularity thing, yeah, I can see that. But if you want to look at the purpose of the Olympic team is to win the gold medal, then yeah, then maybe she's not supposed to be on the team. So uh, but but I think she's a dynamic player. I think she's graceful and has shown class in the way that she's gone about it. She hasn't bought into like all the noise that's around it and like fed it in any way. And I think that fans, whether you're supporting her, hating her, loving her, don't like her into women's sports. I didn't. If you think that you have an opinion about it, follow her lead on it. And I think if you do that, a lot of this stuff will die down because it's getting so toxic at this point that it may get to a place where you can't come back from. And then the person that's going to suffer the most from it is Caitlin Clark, and a lot of it she has no control over.
Yeah, well said. I mean, part of why I wanted to talk about this with you, besides the fact you've tweeted about it, is you know, I am like, a Caitlin Clark fan
Hmm.
and have enjoyed watching her play and have been like it is a very there's a multi-layered aspect of this that cannot be like clear. Like
Yeah.
to the point where on one hand, I think to not acknowledge that there is some specific um bias, or not bias, but there's a specific there is a little bit of hate for Caitlin Clark, and it comes from various places, including the way Angel Reese was treated
Hmm.
after last year, not even this year, and how much she was treated as a villain, and it turned into a racial thing of,
Right.
like there's overtones there. And so that Caitlin Clark didn't create that,
Right.
but she was part of that story. And so she's kind of on one side of it. And it also then gets some people that cheer for her for the wrong reason.
Right.
Right. And so it creates it like reinforces it. But like just as a sports fan, I look at it, I'm like, when's the last time there's an athlete that they had to move stadiums to accommodate their like I'm talking like Pele. Like, I mean, when's
Right.
the like there just aren't that many athletes in any pro sport. Like, you didn't Michael Jordan, as great as he was, they didn't have to move to larger stadiums. He just sold them all
Right.
out. So there's something really special going on there. And so from like the business standpoint, my head's like, you guys like embrace this, don't fight.
Yeah.
And the other part is like acknowledge there is like the thing that happened with Kennedy Carter and Angel Reese cheering for it. That isn't just normal. I don't think there is something there. And there's a little bit of bitterness still
Well,
about like
I don't.
why she's
Well,
getting.
I don't know if I saw Angel Reese cheering for that.
You didn't. Okay.
All right, like that's the type of stuff that then gets the whole conversation skewed because
Well, that's why I wanted to talk
like
about this with you.
like people will take sound bites and then turn it into something different. So like even when Angel Reese was saying that like there's more than one person that she's part of why
Yeah.
the league is being popular now, people took that little piece and was like, oh well, here's you and here's Caitlin Clark. But if you listen to the whole clip, she said the entire WNBA is part of the reason that people are filling stadiums now, and I'm part of the one of the reasons too. And so people will take the sound bites and then turn it into something. And there's so much noise on social media. You don't know what's real and what's not because
Yeah.
the last podcast I did was about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, and so I did a lot of reading. I didn't see anywhere in there that Angel Reese was cheering on uh, that 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 uh, that Caitlin Clark had gotten knocked down because in that same week, uh, freaking Angel Reese got grabbed by the neck and
Yep.
slammed to the ground.
Yep.
And did what kind of coverage did that get? You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Nobody was complaining about that. Nobody was talking about, hey, here's one of our young stars that you're slamming to the ground. She hit her head, all this other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
No one said anything about it. You know what I'm saying? And so this is what makes the whole conversation tough to have is because there is clearly a person that a large percentage of people are trying to push forward and put out front and support, but they're supporting them in the interest of creating hate and division against people that may, like for me, for instance, I love Caitlin Clark,
Yeah.
but is Caitlin Clark the perfect player?
No.
No. So I've watched a few games and I said, hey, like I don't see how she's elevating the team. Like she has great individual stats, but how's it in
Yeah.
elevating the team? As soon as I said that, I got this thing, or that's black hate. That's what like you're just hate. I'm like, no, like you didn't even ask me if I like her or not. You just heard
Yeah.
one critique of her, and you chalk that up to me hating her. I've
Yeah.
been around a lot of great women basketball players. My sister was a great basketball player. Went to college with Dawn Staley, and we had some really good basketball teams there. Dawn Staley was a great player in her own right. I coached women's basketball at Shorecrest High School. I coached at Woodville High School in their select program. I coached basketball in Virginia, women's basketball in Virginia. So I know the sport, I know the game, and so I felt like I'm knowledgeable enough to have an opinion. And it was only after 3 games, and so and even in the thing, I'm like, there's time for her to improve and all these things. But as soon as you criticize them, then you become the person that hates them, and then they use that as like then stack that into the whole racial thing, and then the whole whether your sexual identity thing, and
Hmm.
then it becomes like this big snowball of stuff
Yeah.
that is just completely unnecessary. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Because if you look at how Caitlin Clark is going about it, and like yeah, Caitlin Clark brought a lot of has obviously bringing a lot of attention to the sport, but there's a lot of teams that Caitlin Clark isn't on that sold out their season tickets. And so I don't think that everyone bought all the season tickets to see Caitlin Clark one time, and so it's just a lot of people that just now turning their eyes to a sport that's been really good for a long time, and fighting for their position in it. And then a lot of these people that are supporting Caitlin Clark were the same people that saying like, "Oh, the women want everything. It's a women empowerment thing," and blah 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 blah, and was shooting it down. And now all of a sudden there are these big women's sports fans, and so
Yeah.
it's really interesting to me that whole dynamic. But like I said, if you just follow Caitlin Clark's lead, understand what competition is, understand that like yeah, they shouldn't welcome her into the league with open arms. You have to come and earn your right. It would be like me coming to the Seahawks, and then all the dudes I played against my rookie year. I played against 10 dudes that were in the top 10 or 12 all-time sack leaders in the NFL.
Mhm.
Probably half of them are already in the Hall of Fame. If they had just lined up and was like, oh, this dude's a first round draft pick, the latest, hottest, the top lineman in the country coming into the league, let's just lay down and let him just do whatever he wants to do, then that just cheapens the sport. It
Yeah.
cheapens the competition. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna give you everything I got. I want to see what you have, rookie. You know what I'm saying? Like, show me what you have. If you're all of that, we're gonna bring it to you. We're gonna bring you the physicality of it. We're gonna be in your face. We're gonna design defenses to stop you. All this other kind of stuff. We're gonna challenge everything there is to challenge. That's competition. That's
Yeah.
sports.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's not malice in that. That's just like that's competition. Like, oh, you think you all that? Let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Here, lace them up. Here's the basketball. Let's go play basketball. And let the best team win. And so I think people lose sight of that because they want to inject all these other social issues into the competition. And so then it gets skewed, and then you have all the sound bites on social media. You don't know what's real and what's not, and you take something and run with it, and the next thing you know, it's everything's blown out of proportion.
Yeah, I appreciate all that, and I'll let you go because I know I've kept you for a while. But just I mean, I think a good connection with some of the past conversation we were having. Like one of the things I really loved about Angel Reese this year in the tournament, you talked about vulnerability. She really was vulnerable and explained what's been going on with her and her
Hmm.
teammates. And like I was a big Angel Reese fan after that. Like the way she
Yeah,
handled that situation, like I have a ton of respect for that. Um, I haven't liked every way she's handled everything, but
yeah,
I definitely liked that. And I 100% agree with you, Ray. I, I don't want. I think there's been one game that Caitlin Clark has looked like a really special player, and it was just her last
right.
against the worst team in the WNBA. I'm
Hmm.
looking forward to her eventually being able to overcome. Like it wouldn't be exciting or fun if she just got handed anything.
Right.
But yeah, it's a. I know there's probably a bunch of people that are not interested in the conversation you and I are having right now, and they're like, "Oh,
Right.
God, enough with this." But I think there's so many layers to it. I
Yeah.
at least wanted to create some space for a non-Twitter based conversation between two
Yeah.
people that have different perspectives, but also I think have some similar shared,
Yeah.
hopes for how
Well,
this
even
all
well,
plays.
even like the way Angel Reese handles stuff, right? I compare it to Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman
Mhm.
grew up in Compton, California. So you better have something about you that said, like, I'm gonna fight. I'm a fighter. That's how you survive that. Angel Reese grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, similar to Compton, California. So if you didn't have like I'm the top of the food chain mentality, you wouldn't make it out of there. And so then of course you're gonna lean on the things that helped you be successful. And I think people miss that and just think like, oh, like this is how this one person handles it and this is how she handles it. Like, well, they came from two totally different backgrounds and situations and had to do different things to survive. And so their style of how they compete and how they express themselves is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like Richard Sherman rubbed people the wrong way when he first got here with all the talking and
Yes, he
stuff.
did.
But the dude is like one of the greatest defensive backs ever. And you think
Yeah.
about where he came from and where he is. That dude had to fight and bite and scratch and crawl and do all the things, survive before he could learn how to thrive. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And so I don't think people give that enough credit because they see where a person is and not where they came from.
Awesome. Ray, thank you so much for joining the show today. What a absolute star you continue to
Thank you,
be,
buddy.
and really, really appreciate all the work you're doing for mental health and the insights you're giving us on the Seahawks, man. Let's hope that this is a year of building and a year getting better and healthier and all those good things. And wish you and your family nothing but the best.
Thanks, Brian, man. Thanks for having me. And any other time you want me on, just hit me up. I got you.
You got it, man. That is Ray Roberts. Thank you, Ray. What a great guest Ray is. Someone that I just have a ton of respect for. Someone who I think he stands for the things that I hope I can stand for. I hope others can stand for. Being vulnerable and also strong as a man is not always the easiest balance to have. It's a little easier when you're 6'6" and played in the league. But it's really important to have voices like Ray out there that are showing that and modeling that for people, because frankly, that wasn't something that was particularly prominent for a lot of people, and even now isn't prominent for people in various parts of the country, various parts of the world. And I also love the place that he came from as a Seahawk, and the era that he worked through and lived through. There was a lot of adversity there. There was a lot of things that I think connected here. And I think his insights into how offensive linemen play, I love it, not only because he was an offensive lineman and a damn good one. I mean, the guy blocked for Barry Sanders. He was a very good offensive lineman in the NFL, but he also is this complete person that we got to hear from today that can look beyond just the X's and O's, beyond just how much they weigh, how fast they are, how strong they are. He kind of does pay attention to who the person is and what their makeup is. And you hear that when he talks about Olu Oluwatimi and what he knows about him as a person, not just as a player. And so I think you get a little bit extra insights when you listen to Ray talk about this team, when you also hear him talk about how coaches interact with the players and what he thinks works and doesn't. I loved what he said today about the details that they're focusing on and the way that they're coaching that is not something you typically see in the NFL, and the way that Scott Huff relates to younger players, which when you have a young offensive line like the Seahawks do, really matters. And so like a lot of really great stuff from Ray. And, even that last conversation, man, I know for a fact I'm going to see comments about, oh my gosh, turn off the pod after X many minutes. They talk about Caitlin Clark and I don't want to hear it. That's fine. That's totally fine. But I'm going to continue to use this show to talk about things that I'm interested in with people that I'm interested in. And hopefully there's other folks that gain something from it. I'm pretty sure there are. And Ray being a black man and also all that women's basketball background with his family and as a coach and all those things, I thought was a great chance to have a non-soundbite conversation about what's going on with Caitlin Clark. And, me being someone who's been really, defensive of what's been going on with her and feeling like there is, Ray and I, if we had a little bit more time, I would have spent a little bit more on it. I do think that there's some healing that can happen by actually acknowledging a little bit more. People are a little bit afraid to acknowledge the realities of what are going on from a race standpoint, from all the different, there's a bunch of different aspects that are going on there. And it's not just race. Diana Taurasi, as far as I'm concerned, has demonstrated a lot of reticence about Caitlin Clark, even before she came into the league. The way if you heard her cover the college game when they did Sue Bird and Taurasi's show, you could just hear the way she talked about Caitlin Clark. And she was like, yeah, she's good. But she was always, there's this hint of, I don't know if jealousy is maybe not the right word, but just not unimpressed. Like, I don't know that she's really impressed. And so there is this, like, forget the race part, but just like, there's this group of people that just kind of think that Caitlin Clark is overrated. And so if I could just sweep it all away, which I can't, and it's important not to, but there's this basic sports story there that's got me mostly fired up, which is, here is someone who I think is a transformational player, and I'm hoping that she is. Kind of like I was hoping Kelsey Plum was going to be a transformational player. She used to be the leading scorer, for college basketball until Caitlin Clark did it. But I think that's a potential outcome here, and it'd be really cool. It's fun when those happen. They don't happen that often. And then there's a group of people, and it's not racially separated. It's just there's a group of people that think she's overrated. But now it's become so much more than that. And so anyway, I know there's a lot of people sick of that conversation. Personally, Fever are playing tonight, 4:00 Pacific. I'm going to be tuning into that. Have I ever paid attention to when WNBA games are? No. Maybe some of the Sue Bird early days with Lauren Jackson, and some of the times where the Storm have been the league champs. I've maybe tuned in now and then, but I'm invested in this, and I personally, I don't want it to be right for Caitlin Clark, because I want anything to be proven wrong, as far as like the racial side of this, or the sexual orientation part of this, or all the other things that are just aggravating. It's sad that they're being mixed in, but just from a sports standpoint, like, I want to watch her rise and be great, and I think it would be fun. And so anyway, just part of what I am interested in there, and appreciate you guys tuning in. Conversation from Fran, who's been a long time listener. She says, Ray, you ate that. I 100% agree. I mean, gosh, there was not a lot of wasted words in what Ray brought to that conversation, and appreciate everything he did. Fran goes on to say, Brian, thank you for always being inclusive. That means a ton to me, Fran. Actually, it's Fnan. Sorry. I thought it was Fran. Fnan. I want to be as inclusive as possible and represent different perspectives, and try to have a holistic view of these things. And I am super flawed in that sense. I will not always know when I'm saying something that I shouldn't say, but when people tell me about that, I try to learn and listen and adjust. And I hope other people do the same thing. And I heard you say they turned into the Storm too. I don't know. I'm not I definitely get the Storm. They added some, former kind of MVP level player this year, and Jewel Lloyd obviously is very good. I like Asia Wilson. Like, I like watching her play. There's a few players, Kelsey Plum. There's a few players that pique my attention, but for the most part, like the Caitlin Clark story is the one thing that kind of just pulls me in. And so I will, we'll see. I think the Angel Reese and that team, the Twin Towers they've got on that team, could be a really interesting thing over time. So absolutely excited to continue paying attention, but don't worry, I will not make every show about the WNBA. I know there's a lot of folks that just want Seahawks coverage here, which we will continue to do. All right, everybody. That is what I have for you today. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and on Facebook. Did I say Facebook? I meant Instagram, at Hawk Blogger. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday.